Read the Social Security listings. I know you've heard me talk about them for a while, and you think that your medical condition satisfies the criteria. So what do you need to do to prove it? Because I've had a couple people say, oh, I think I meet the listings. How long do you think I got a chance of getting approved? I said, first and foremost, read the entire listing, not just a specific section. That's where people get caught up in the haze. They look at the specific segments of the listings, but they don't look at the preamble introductory information that actually ties in with it. Because the introductory portion is the portion that actually talks about how you medically prove you meet the listings. And so if those two don't jive perfectly, if those two don't drive perfectly and so forth, you don't necessarily meet the listings. So you want to make sure you read this thing in its entirety. So this way you're not around here thinking that you make the listings when actually you don't necessarily have everything. Take the listings with you to your treating doctor for them to review. You want your treating doctor to take a look to see whether or not the medical evidence that they are mentioning in the listings, if you have that in your medical records in order to support that you actually meet the listings. If the doctor thinks you meet the listings, ask them if they'd be willing to identify this in a statement, outlining what medical conditions you have and what medical evidence they believe supports that you meet this listed medical condition. Keep in mind another thing. Just because you believe you meet the listings, it's not an absolute. If there are contrary evidence, if there's other evidence in your files to the contrary that says that may demonstrate that you, even though you may meet the criteria, but you're not necessarily at listings level, they can look at that. And you're thinking, what do you mean by that? Like, well, for instance, if you're sitting here saying that I meet the listings for a particular condition related to my back, but then during that same time period, you are doing work, where you work 6-7 months and then you stop, and you work 6-7 months, you stop, and you're like, wait a minute. When you're at listings level, that means your situation is such severity that finding you disabled is usually not a problem unless there is evidence to the contrary. So if there is evidence to the contrary that even though you meet the listings, but there's other evidence that shows that maybe you can function higher than that level, just because you meet the listings doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a slam dunk. So it's important that you remember all those things. The listings is a beast. It can be helpful if you have the evidence necessary to support it. But just keep in mind, meeting the listings in and of itself is not a slam dunk. And when you're looking at the listings, read the entire thing.